D-Lo 404 Boxing. Shout out to the LDBC. It's been a minute since I dropped a video. I had a lot going on, personal life. Nothing bad, good things actually happening for me. But just been too busy to actually take time to dedicate to making videos and dropping them. And I ain't gonna really say I was too busy to do it. I just hadn't taken the time to do it. But I've been active in the chat section as usual, supporting other guys' channels, dropping on super chats, you know what I'm saying, and doing what I can to, stay abreast of what's going on in the sport of boxing, what's going on, in the LDBC and in YouTube in general. That said, it's been announced that Dominic Breazeale and Deontay Wilder have been ordered by the WBC for Wilder's WBC championship. We know that Breazeale has been Wilder's mandatory for quite some time, and I feel like the fight's overdue. They're not necessarily overdue, but I think it's come due. So while I never wanted the Breazeale fight to stand in the way of any of the big fights, potentially a rematch with Fury or unification for Undisputed versus Anthony Joshua, the fact that Breazeale is the mandatory, the WBC made him mandatory, he deserves a shot. There's been talk from a lot of people, while Breazeale was on the outside looking in, waiting on his shot, and Dillian White was claiming to be the mandatory, that Wilder was ducking Breazeale. And all I want to say is, for those same people that have said that, I do not want you guys coming on my video saying that Wilder's now cherry picking Breazeale, because the man is mandatory, has to fight him. When the fight takes place, we'll see what the outcome is. I'm not even going to talk about predictions or anything like that right now. Fight isn't even made. But when the fight gets made and it gets closer to the time for the fight to happen, I'll make my prediction video. But that said, as I stated a minute ago, Breazeale's been Wilder's mandatory for some time. There's some who say he's been the mandatory for 3 years and so forth and so on, which isn't true. Breazeale has been Wilder's mandatory since Wilder, I think when Wilder fought Stavern back, I want to say that was November of 17, Wilder-Stavern rematch took place. He became the mandatory by beating Eric Molina, if I'm not mistaken. And originally, Breazeale was supposed to fight Stavern himself on the undercard in that fight. But what happened was, Luis Ortiz failed the drug test for not disclosing medication that he was taking, and Stavern got moved into that primetime spot and got to go ahead and challenge for the title, which he was the mandatory to begin with. So he was stepping aside, taking step-aside money and he was actually fighting a volunteer against Breazeale. He was fighting against Breazeale, going to fight against Breazeale, while Wilder took a volunteer against Ortiz, and things ended up working out to where Stavern got his shot. We saw how that went for Stavern. Breazeale beat Molina, and Breazeale became the mandatory. So that was, I'd say, just roughly 17 months ago, maybe. So it's due. It's time for Breazeale to get his shot. There's a built-in storyline, and we all know about the so-called bad blood between him and Team Wilder. So, it should make for an interesting build up to the fight, and hopefully an even better fight. You got Breazeale. The thing about it, where I think that's really good for Breazeale to go ahead and get this shot, is I feel like Breazeale becoming the mandatory has actually held up his career. It's prevented him from going ahead and taking fights pursuing other fights, because he's had the mandatory in the bag. So he had to be selective in who he fought and when he fought, how often he fought, or whatever, because, essentially he was one win away from being the WBC heavyweight champion of the world. But at the same time, he was one loss away from losing that mandatory position. So it's kind of like he had to protect that mandatory so that he can get that spot, so he can get his shot. I mean, so with that said, I understand. I've been critical of some guys for not being active enough, but I'm glad that this fight is happening. Want to see more activity in the heavyweight division. Why I say I don't feel like it was necessary for it to be mandated was because I think this was a fight that Wilder was already trying to make after everything else fell through. He was trying to go ahead and make that fight. And the thing with it being mandated is that now Breazeale's in a position where he could, be picky about the purse and demand it go to purse bid so he can get a better split. But the downside of that is you'll have any and everybody in a position where they could bid on it, and there's no telling where this fight can end up. But that said, as a fan, I just want to see the fight. I don't really care about the money aspect of it. I want to see these fighters getting paid because of the nature of what they do and because of their profession. But ultimately, I just want to see the fights. I don't want to see fighters get screwed over by promoters or anybody else in the business, but I just want to see the fights take place, and I'm all for, the fighters, being taken care of, but I'm also all for the fans being taken care of and us getting the fights that we want to see. So, that said, for Deontay Wilder, he's had his share of fights fall through in terms of guys failing drug tests, in terms of guys flat out telling him, they don't want to fight him at this time. And just different reasons, even the situation that just happened with Tyson Fury. So, I'm hoping that, this fight gets made, nothing gets in the way to derail it, and the fight takes place, and we get a good fight, and hopefully it's a fight along the way to a series of good fights for the heavyweight division involving a lot of fighters. So I'm excited about this fight. I'm hoping that nothing happens to derail it. I hope that it gets made and that we finally get to see Dominic Breazeale and Deontay Wilder get it on, and let's see how they match up against each other. That's all I got to say about it. It's D-Lo404 Boxing. Shout out to my subscribers. Shout out to anybody that supports my channel. If you haven't subscribed, I ask that you please subscribe. I'm trying to get the subscriber count up, trying to grow my channel. Drop a comment in the comment section if you like to. Hit that like button for me. It's D-Lo404 Boxing once again, and I'm out. Peace.